All right, so good morning. Um, my name is Norma and I'm from Embrace Farm. And in joining me this morning is Gina Dowd. Gina's from Counselling West, has a social care background, is a psychotherapist with almost 20 years experience, focusing on supporting adults and adolescents in dealing with many life issues that affect family life. Has training in the areas of trauma, bereavement and loss. And how did Embrace Farm meet Gina? Well, Embrace Farm was doing a number of information nights and we ended up in Tune one night and there was Gina. Gina kind of fell into our lives at that stage and has been with us since and is a very valued member of Embrace Farm, and we're very thankful to have her expertise and her guidance as well and support at times. So Gina and myself are going to talk about trauma this morning, because that's kind of in the area that she works with our farm accident survivors. So Gina, what is trauma?
It's a big question, isn't it, Norma? And it's something we don't really think about until there it is in front of us or there it is on our lap. And we all have an idea of it because, let's face it, with everything that's happening at the minute, with our access to social media and world news, we're constantly being exposed to awful, devastating, traumatic situations. The people that I meet in the group have described it to me very well. And what they have said is their life changed in an instant. Trauma is usually unplanned. It's something that arrives into your life uninvited. How it impacts on people varies from one person to another. What science will tell us, what neuroscience, what statistics tell us now is that when you experience a sudden or a catastrophic event, you often develop symptoms known as post-traumatic stress disorder. And these are a range of symptoms that vary from poor sleep, lack of appetite, flashbacks, poor memory, all issues within the psyche and within the soma that impact your daily functioning. Again, back to the people in the group who are the actual experts on trauma, they have said that the trauma of the accident occurs first of all, then the readjustment to life, and the trauma of the loss occurs. What next? How do I cope? Where do I go from here? And so that's often known as the shock phase. And then the reintegration of life is about the loss phase. And it's a lot about who you were in the past. It's a lot about what you could do, because again, trauma is not an invited guest. And it becomes about, well, what next? And I can't. And that's where I guess the mind comes in, because we're designed to prepare for trauma, for loss, and to avoid it at all costs. It's how our brain functions. So what often happens when we have experienced trauma is the mind gets very busy reliving the trauma, or the mind gets very busy being preoccupied with the past and overly concerned about the future. And that's very easy, I mean, very not easy, but I suppose it's a place that you can slip into very easily, because for a farm accident survivor, they want to return to something that they have full knowledge in, that they also love. And as you know, maybe a farm has been handed down, it's a generational holding piece. And they want to return, but what we know about farming is it's a dangerous occupation. It is one of the occupations that has the most accidents involved in it. And they want to return to something that they love, that they need to do, but they now have this trauma in their life that often scares the living daylights out of them. And then they're physically prevented in so many different ways from returning to what's called normal life.
I guess when we talk about a normal reaction to trauma, and how it takes time and you go through the different phases, shock and settling into readjusting to life, I guess what's not a normal reaction it's not all about going and getting professional help. It's about trying to work through those phases yourself. You know, I suppose for family members watching on, you know, neighbors and extended family, they're the people that always try and help the person, or, you know, try and look for outside help or go somewhere to support the person. I suppose to try and explain to them what's normal and what's not normal, and when to possibly look for help or when to just kind of sit back and give things time.
It's very hard to know, because we all exist in the world with our own experience, with our own functioning, with our own family traits and our values. What I would say to anyone who's experienced a trauma, and for those supporting them, you don't have to be an expert to support anyone with trauma. But what you need to be able to do is to listen with patience and listen with empathy, so that the story can be retold and retold. Shushing someone or telling someone to move on, or sometimes with all the best will in the world, reminding someone how lucky they are that they're still alive, doesn't always work the best with trauma. We know we're lucky as a race of people. The Irish are often happy to come second, and we've seen how we celebrate our soccer, our GAA, all that comes with it, and it's not all about the winning. So we're very good at celebrating as such second place. But moving on from trauma, the biggest support is time and it's patience. When perhaps it's time to seek outside support is when the sleep is constantly disturbed, when someone is at a distress tolerance level that's no longer manageable, as in it's impacting their mood, it's impacting their sleep, it's impacting their eating habits, it's causing extra hurt or extra strain in the family. Because trauma doesn't affect one person, it affects at least 8 people. And everybody has usually been part of a farm accident in one way or the other. Of course, no one experiences it like the person who has direct experience of the accident, or the victim, as you might call them, at the early stages. But everyone has to deal with the loss, with the fallout. You can't go through trauma without feeling the impact of the loss, of the change, of the anger, of the low mood. So we all have enough information out there about mind your mental health, the signs of anxiety, the signs of depression. And I would say for anybody who's supporting someone, be open and be truthful. Don't tell someone how they're feeling, but perhaps say to them what you're experiencing in observing them, or what you're experiencing in supporting them. Because I can only speak for myself. And I can only say to you, Norma, I'm noticing that, or I'm wondering about. And it's not that you look for an answer from the person, but you're letting them know that you care about them and that you've noticed them. And you're leaving the dilemma with them. And then maybe at a later stage, you're going back and saying, perhaps I'm not the best person to speak to about this. Perhaps your friend is better. Perhaps somebody who has gone through this is better. Perhaps there's a professional out there who can listen to you. Perhaps we can think about this together.
But the general thing and why you're saying there is about talking and listening.
Talking, look, as Virginia Satir said once, you know, communication is to a relationship what breathing is to life. And there's none of us experts on communication. And there's certainly none of us experts on listening. Because you tell me a story now, Norma, and then, you know, I need to tell you my story. And, oh, well, you know, this happened to me. And it takes an awful lot of patience also to listen to somebody that has experienced a trauma. Because with the best will in the world, I'd like that person to get on with it. I'd like to persuade them what they've got to live for. I'd like to tell them, you know, it will be okay. And we need to offer hope, absolutely. And sometimes we need to offer levels of what I would call cop on. I'm finding this hard. I don't feel you're speaking to me. And it's not like we talk like that all the time. We don't say things like I feel, but at least if I'm with an I statement, I'm letting you know I'm impacted, but I care about you, and together we can do something. And it's the supporter should not be afraid either to express their real feelings, be they anger, be they frustration, be they joy. They're all normal feelings. And we can recover when we have a row. And we can recover when we say something that isn't helpful, because that word, I'm doing my best or I'm sorry, keeps you in the relationship and keeps the communication style open. Because, as I said, there's none of us experts on perfect communication.
And on that note, asking for help, again, you've touched on it there. It's not an easy thing to do. And I think, especially when you're in the depths of trying to readjust your life or trying to rehabilitate or recover, whatever the words may be, it's not easy to ask for help. And sometimes you just don't know how to. Any bit of guidance there for people on how to ask for help and how to reach out?
What we have to balance, and what I've learned, especially from the group, is the people in the group say the thing that sometimes keeps them going is their resilience. So they go out on the farm and they know they shouldn't hop up on the tractor, and they know they shouldn't do X, Y, and Z. And a family member is looking at them going, for God's sake, would you get off that tractor? Would you not do this? But sometimes that resilience and that determination is actually what gets them through the day. Mm-hmm. It actually is. It is what is keeping many people focused. Sometimes it's what's keeping people alive. And we all have a drive and we all have an ambition. And if you think back to when we're little kiddies, when a child is learning how to walk, I can do it myself. And they start off and they might grip the furniture. And then there's that moment when they're ready to let go. And they may fall and they may trip, but kiddies get back up again. And they love that task of accomplishment and doing something. So it doesn't change as we get older. And it almost comes back into our psyche when we experience a trauma, a farm accident, which for many people results in a disability. So it's recognizing the resilience and the need for someone to do it myself. And then it's about, okay, would it help, like coming to the group that Embrace offer, where you can go to somewhere where someone is relatable because they have been through something similar. Mm-hmm. Often people say to me, okay, well, if I come and see you, but you actually haven't been through an accident. And I say, no, I haven't. And as a psychotherapist, you can't cover all eventualities for every person that you meet in the door. But one thing that we can all have is empathy and the ability to listen so we can understand what it's like. And the benefit and the uniqueness of the Embrace group is everybody is sitting beside someone who has been through something very similar. They all chat among each other and they're able to go from extreme pain and a feeling of complete bereavement and loss to an applause and a giggle and something funny that they tried to do. So the ebb and flow of the group goes from very, very serious to extremely humorous. And it's hard to explain it to anyone unless you've been in it. But I think what people say is the most helpful part of it. Someone gets what I'm saying. Someone is on the same page. And that, for any of us as human beings, when someone can relate to where we're at, when someone can share an experience, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Yes, the sense of understanding and empathy, as you say, I guess. So I guess for farmers, traditionally, they probably wouldn't be known to be the type of people to go to a support group. So I suppose when we talk about our groups, as you just mentioned there, we the people, they talk everything from very serious to the very humorous. And just to touch on some of the things that are spoken about, I always find everything reverts back to farming in one shape or another, Or, how do you manage to get down the yard now to feed the calves or move the cattle or, opening gates and gaps and to do all of that? So maybe if we could just touch on some of the things that the group talks about, from the medical stuff, from the appointments, from the general perception from people to, coping with their own families and coping with their own things going on.
I think that the one important thing to say about the group is there's no expert in the group. And there's also no egos in the group. So people meet, and often, as you know very well, people might ring and say they'd like to come. But often for most of us, the idea of going to a group and sharing would scare the living daylights out of you. Like it really would. Who will be there? Will I know someone? Oh God, I can't tell my story. What if I get upset? What if I talk too much? What if I'm not able to talk? I've yet to see a person in that group that doesn't feel at ease from the moment they arrive, because they're met with a group of people, first of all, who are hugely welcoming. Second of all, who get straight into the story. It's straight in. What happened to you? Show me your leg, show me your arm. What are you at? And it's that farming piece that makes everybody relate to, well, I'm at stage 1 of my recovery. I'm at stage 2. I'm at stage 3. And then there's a WhatsApp group. And that has to be the funniest group that I have ever been part of. I've never seen people to talk about something so traumatic and so awful, and then to come out the other end. What do you reckon now? I tried this or I tried that. And then sometimes family members come in, or people say, well, I went back to my family. And people talk about the impact, really, which is post-traumatic stress. So they range from how they're not sleeping, the physiotherapist that they met, the difficulties with the prosthesis, the difficulty in telling family how they feel. I remember one man, and I laughed and I know he wouldn't mind me telling this story, how he took off in his truck one day and did not tell anyone where he was going when he wasn't meant to be driving. And I think we all had tears in our eyes, and his wife happened to be with him, shaking her head. And she said, and what can you do with that? And here was a man who was saying, yeah, I know I'm stubborn, but I'm resilient and I had to do it. This is people that have literally faced death here. This is people who have met various professionals, some of whom they've got on with, some of whom they haven't. And this is people who've also sought out psychotherapy off their own bat, knowing that it's hard, knowing that they don't want to continue to impact their family and go on and on, as they would say in their own word. And everybody each day is learning how to manage it differently. So there isn't one size fit all. There isn't one formula. Listening, talking, being honest, having the crack, that's actually the formula for the group, and that's what makes it so successful. And that's why there's new members all the time, and that's why there's existing members that keep coming back.
And as you mentioned, the WhatsApp group, yes, today goes from chatting and talking about an upcoming operation, or what the benefits of this or that may be, to total slagging each other off, to quizzes of a Saturday night, back again to somebody really struggling at a point in time, and I suppose it's unique in its sense of family members are also welcome as well, spouses. Spouses normally had adult children come with their dads. But I suppose from a professional point of view, Gina, what do you get from the groups? What do you make of it from your own point of view?
Well, as easy as the style is in the group, it has a trauma focus. So thought and planning go into the group. From Peter, who makes contact with absolutely everyone, for all the phone calls you get in how you direct people, in how you calm, to the planning that I do for the group. What I get from the group is a group of people who are open to being honest, who are open to being vulnerable, who are open to advice giving, practical and otherwise, and who are ready and willing to talk about the experience of their trauma, how they're getting through it and what they're struggling with. It is the most honest, supportive group that I have ever encountered. It is therapeutic in its own way. And that therapy comes from the people themselves in their openness to attend in the group and in their willingness to speak. The therapy comes from having a cup of tea and a sandwich and what I call that sideways conversation that they're able to have. So whether they know it or not, and I think they all do because they're all, an entirely intelligent, resilient group of people, therapy is happening on so many different levels in the group. And it's what we all get from it and what we all leave with, which is often a sense of hope, it's a sense of achievement, but also for me as a non-accident survivor, I have a huge sense of pride in the people who come, a huge and huge gratitude.
Yeah, and just reflecting on our conversation, I suppose the basis of what we're talking about today, even when it comes to trauma or anything, it's about talking and listening.
Yeah. And it's if any of us, I always try and leave the group and say, okay, I'm going to try and not worry about little things in my own life, which are small and insignificant, but it's actually all of us would benefit from training ourselves to listen, be it for a minute, be it for 2 minutes, because that's all any of us need. We don't need someone to tell us how to live. We have the answers. Sometimes we need to be guided, be it by a group, by a professional, by a good friend, absolutely. And we need to be able to lean into people and to someone perhaps on a one-to-one. But trust your listening style. Trust you don't have to have the answers. It's not about having the answers, but it's listening with purpose and with empathy. And, above all, with kindness.
Yeah. And listening is acknowledging the person, and and acknowledging somebody's trauma or event or anything they've been through is healing in its own right.
It is. It is. Yeah, it is.
Gina, thank you for your time and thank you for the chat today.
Okay. Thank you, Norma.